Oh, okay. I can start us then. So we'll chair into order the first meeting, and I will let the speaker take over introducing everybody here.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was trying to make sure I had my stream set up. But yes, this is the first meeting of the House Minor. I will start with myself as the speaker of the houses. I am High Nominator Serpens, Ophidian, Ivor. I'm representing House Serpens as well as the speaker for this meeting going forward. If we could just quickly go down my list. Lyra is next from my count.
Yeah, sure. My name is Horset Lyra Nomikoto Emiya. I'm subbing in for Blue as the House Representative of House Lyra.
Okay, House Triangulum.
Fantastic. I'm Lady Synchronous Triangulum Urzen Hyperbolus.
Okay. Aquila.
I am Praetor Aquila Adler Derek for House Aquila.
Okay. Pixis.
I am the Orator of the Rose, Mootseeker Pixis Taberna Anu for House Pixis.
Okay. Reticulum.
Hey, I'm Shigan Reticulum Perps.
Mm-hmm. And Eridites? Eridanus?
I am Trivix Eridanus Klaus Damocles Nivelian.
Okay. Going forward, I believe we have a schedule and a explanation of the goals forward. Do you want to going first? I believe Xavier, you were the one who wanted to be in charge of making sure that the meeting was running on time. Do you still feel that way, or do you want me to take over that role? Where do you feel on that? I have no preference.
I'm perfectly happy then to just sort of watch the time so that you all can have a free-flowing discussion.
Yeah, then I will take lead on discussion, and Xavier, you if when we get to points, just tap on your gavel and hit my taser, and we'll be good.
Yeah, sounds great. One thing I would like to do very quickly is there's been discussion between several of the houses and the representatives here that we may wish to keep the results of any votes we have today private between the 7 of us and not announce them on stream, because we are early for the deadline and there was concerns over other houses or factions being able to use our results publicly against us. Did we wish to continue to have that idea?
I agree on that idea, because we are aware that some houses major and other houses can watch this stream, so it would be better off if we keep the vote off stream.
Yeah, I think
agreed.
Discussion on screen. All agreed?
Yep.
Agreed.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, unanimous decision. Okay. So I think that good roll call. Everybody knows here. Explanation of goals. So today's goals for the meeting are discussion of proposals of each House Minor for asset selection regarding the faction turn, the allocation of the 3 remaining hit points, the goal selection for the said faction turn presented to said Space Master Adam, so that the Houses Minor know what they are going for. Just a simple breakdown of timeframes. Most of this discussion now is going to be happened regarding the asset selection. Everyone's going to have a chance to talk about their stuff, what they want going forward, and then we will move on to the hit points and the faction selection. Is there any clarification on the presented goals in that document? If not, then we will move forward. Does any house have a preference on wanting to go first regarding the assets? House Serpents itself will abstain to another house.
I think going down the list alphabetically or something might be fair.
Yeah, you want to go with that?
We should follow the list that you read out when we were introduced.
Yeah.
I think that would be better.
Yeah, I read out Serpents first. So the House Serpents proposal. Do we want to go over just what we proposed first and then we'll discuss it? There's my dog.
I think we should just discuss the assets we can all agree that we are going to do and get that out of the way, so we save all the discussion on.
So, if I can make a suggestion, if originally in for just literally announcing the slates that we've proposed. However, there is a document available. So the question is, do we want to publicly announce in this meeting what's read off that document?
It may be a good idea, because then we can give a sort of preliminary justification for each choice, if that's something we're interested in.
Mm.
Okay, so then let's do that, and let's do that in like alphabetical order, and everyone has 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
All right, so if House Aquila could start, do you need me to read off your slate, or do you have it in front of you?
No, yeah, I have the slate.
Okay.
All right, so for let's see, we have 2 pre-tech manufactories, both to be placed on Triangulum. We have a transit web, also for Triangulum, a book of secrets located on Serpens homeworld, the popular movement on Imperial Prime, Space Marines on Aquila or Triangulum, depending on which we decide is more in need of it. Deep strike landers on Reticulum, and commodity brokers on Lyra. Would you like me to discuss why we picked those, or are we going to leave that for later?
If you have a short sentence maybe about why any such suggestions were made, you're fine to make a short suggestion now, but we will save larger conversation for after the introduction of all of the assets.
Okay. I think really the only thing that might bear saying is the Space Marines. One of the reasons we thought we might put them on Aquila is just for flavor. This kind of makes sense, although I think Triangular might be the more strategic choice. So we're willing to go with either of those based on what we would prefer to emphasize as a faction. Other than that, I think the rest of it will probably come up in the main conversation.
Right.
Okay, cool. Do you want to go, you're good there, go down to Eridanes? Yeah, I will never get that right.
I'm just checking. All right, we had two the same as before, like pre-tech manufacturers, 2 on Lovelace, Transit Web also on Lovelace, Commodities Broker on Tiber, Book of Secrets on Verona, Space Marines on I don't know how to pronounce that.
Diomikato.
Diomikato. Nemo Huge on Orifice, Strike Fleet on Lodestone. I think like Commodities Broker on Tiber is one thing that we're kind of looking at, mainly because as we are the trades like place, it's like better off if we have some sort of like benefit to like trading and whatnot is, I guess, one flavor thing.
Cool. Shall I go?
Yeah, I think that's good. Lyra is next.
Okay, so we placed Transit Web on Loveless, a Book of Secrets on Hroa, Commodities Broker on Loveless, Pre-Tech Manufactory on Loveless, Popular Movement on Tiber, Deep Strike Landers on Tiber, Commodities Broker on Tiber, and Space Marines on Orpheus. I think, for the most part, we also assigned each asset to a house, but I think I can elaborate on that once we get to the second part of the meeting. But I'd say the only weird thing is probably the Aquilan Legionnaires on Orpheus, but we thought that since we are not, we don't have access to the transit web, there would be need of some sort of protection for Orpheus, and it kind of made sense narratively that perhaps a legion of Aquilan Space Marines could have been placed on Orpheus for some R&R after the GATS campaign.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. Pixis?
So we went with a pre-tech manufactory on Lovelace, and then a second pre-tech manufactory there. Space Marines on Diomikato, and then Commodities Broker on Tiber, which is sort of the I think we all fairly agreed on that kind of thing. But where we differ is the Book of Secrets on Orpheus, Psychic Assassins on Hroa, and Integral Protocols on Lovelace to be transported to Pixis, and then the Transit Web, which we all agree on. We went with Book of Secrets on Orpheus for the same reason as Lyra has suggested, to have Space Marines on Lyra, because we see it as isolated, but we don't necessarily think that it's under threat from force attack. But obviously that's something we're willing to give ground on because it's not really our domain.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Integral protocols is sort of our choice for our asset, and we can see that there's some disagreement with that, so we're willing to talk that out a bit.
Okay, cool. Reticulum?
Okay. Our slate, I think, is mostly more thematic. They skews a little bit more thematic than mechanical. As I think similar to most everyone else, we have 2 pre-tech manufacturers on Lovelace, a transit web on Lovelace, we then have Space Marines on Dia Mikato, we have a Demagogue on Orpheus, a Commodities Broker on Tiber, a Book of Secrets on Heroa, and a Popular Movement on the Lodestone.
Okay. Any comments on that you want to put, or are you good there?
I don't think so. They can wait.
Okay, cool. House Serpents it put forward 2 pre-tech manufacturers on Loveless, a transit web on Loveless, Space Marines on Orpheus, Popular Movement on Lodestone, Book of Secrets on Heroa, and Popular Movement on Diomaka. And Commodities Broker on Tiber. I don't have any comments aside from the Book of Secrets was placed on Heroa for reasonings of our hexes combined with uppity people.
Cleverly said, cousin.
Yeah. House Triangulum?
Yeah, so House Triangulums is exactly the same if you look at it. We are doing Transit Web Lovelace, 2 Pretext Lovelace, 1 Book of Secrets on Heroa, Space Marines on Orpheus, 2 Popular Movements, 1 on the Lodestone, 1 on Dio Mikato, and a Commodities Broker on Tiber. My 1 or 2 sentence explanation might be high HP at a time where we get the most bang for our buck from the initial asset purchases. Also, they're fairly thematic, so.
Okay, cool. Going forward with the explanation of the slates, we're now open to discussion and questions towards specific slates. Is there any questions that jump out immediately that anyone wants to put forward of that, or do you want to discuss like the heat map of where we agree and where we disagree?
I think we should start with where we agree. I think just getting everything that we can agree on out of the way so we can start with the discussion's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that'll probably be the bulk of it.
Okay. So the first thing that I can see that we agree on like unanimously is the transit web.
Yeah.
Yep. So just we agree transit web on Lovelace. Like no need for questions or reasoning why. So it seems like a sound proposal.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The next is also on Lovelace. Two pre-tech manufacturers.
Yeah.
Seems to be the general consensus of 6 of us of the Houses Minor, and then 1 is in the statement of only having 1 pre-tech manufacturer.
I believe that's Pixis, and I believe Pixis trades out a commodities broker for a pre-tech manufacturing.
We are in favor of 2 pre-tech manufacturers.
It is House Lyra's proposal that has 2 commodity
Lyra.
brokers.
I wanted to note that that's the only difference between us on the pre-tech manufacturing front is that Lyra's slate has commodities broker instead of.
Okay.
I think when it comes to having two pre-tech is in the sense of we need to start building like TL5 stuff, and I think 2 pre-tech is probably the most optimal one when it comes to the beginning out of everything, and I think a lot of us can agree on that factor. So I think this is one of the ones we can probably discuss and try and get maybe as if like I think if we can agree on other decisions and there's one decision open, we should go for the 2 pre-tech, but I think we can all agree that we're definitely going to have at least 1 pre-tech.
Yes.
I'd like to hear Lyra's argument for why not having 2.
I'm also interested in hearing that.
As well.
Just a second. Let me see if there's a tag in the thing where specifically. I think it was mostly thematic. So the difference between two pre-tech manufacturers, because we wanted Eridanus to have something more narratively meaningful for them, and it seemed like a commodities broker fit that more than a pre-tech manufacturer. So we wanted to try and make to make all the houses have something that is both mechanically and thematically meaningful, right? So it kind of seemed that if we gave two pre-tech manufacturers, it doesn't really fit into the lore of Eridanus. That was the biggest reason, I believe.
I do think that there was some anticipation that Reticulum would end up with one of the manufactories at some point, potentially. So at the current moment, I believe in your slate, the commodities broker that starts on Lovelace is a
the commodity broker on Tiber.
There's a commodities broker on Reticulum.
My apologies.
On Loveless, that is supposed to, according to my house's what's it called, proposal, is for House Reticulum. So it's Reticulum suppliers. If you look at the.
So Reticulum generally felt that, especially with the clarification from Adam about our scale, that we would probably thematically prefer pre-tech manufacturer over commodities broker, as we tend to produce more complicated items in smaller quantities. So we would use less kind of thematically of the mass supplies that a commodities broker would bring, and more kind of the individual crafting expertise that you'd get from some pre-tech technology in a manufacturing.
All
We
right.
also have to consider that Eridanus is fictionally in control of basically all of the money, so their asset can basically be considered as the fat creds as well. And not that they don't necessarily need their own in lore, but they do have sort of a monopoly over that I think.
Yeah.
Well, also on that front, we also, since Reticulum and Eridanus share a system, we felt like if Reticulum were to need a lot of the supplies from a commodities broker, that's something we would probably work very closely with Eridanus with, since they would probably be the kind of contact for that sort of thing.
Yeah, it does make sense for us, the commodities broker, because we do in some ways take care of the Imperial Bank, so it makes sense that we kind of have the commodities broker situation on us. So it comes to what's our sense on pre-tech labs then?
Well, if I just may add, because if my house's main concern was narrative and narrative sense, and House Reticulum believes that a pre-tech manufacturer fits that better than a commodities broker, then I feel it would be a moot point for me to argue against a representative of House Reticulum regarding that specific asset.
Okay, so if I'm understanding that correctly, House Lyra is ceding to House Reticulum in the statement of that a pre-tech manufacturer works in like a lore standpoint for them.
Yes.
Okay. So it seems that Transit Web and two pre-tech manufacturers are decided upon. It seems to be unanimous in everyone in that situation. As far as all being on Lovelace.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next next least debated content statement is the Book of Secrets on Hroa, which I have a personal interest in having Hroa having the Book of Secrets in the statement of again the said dissonance. But Pixis, was your statement? Can you defend the statement of putting psychic assassins on there?
Yes. So first of all, in the document, I'm gonna quote Will here because it's perhaps the core of the argument. It is because we have to. You all know we have to for psychic assassins. It was made largely because Book of Secrets we felt was better positioned on Orpheus in a mechanical sense, and it works there thematically. And then, of course, Book of Secrets is suboptimal if you then get multiple. and Psychic Assassins are still a strong asset. This isn't something that we feel particularly strongly about, and we saw it to some extent as an element for debate. And if the other houses are so unanimous in their decision about Book of Secrets, we don't really see much reason to fight very hard on the matter.
I'm in agreement of like the thematic approach of Psychic Assassins. My only concern is on the mechanical approach of the Book of Secrets can be flavored appropriately to work in House Serpents, I feel.
We agree, definitely.
I think we have to do, when it comes to Serpents, we have to look at wagering mechanical versus
Agreed.
Like, we understand that the Psychic Assassins make sense because of the whole Emperor thing, but also mechanically, I would say for like asset-wise, we need to focus on mechanics for this one. And Book of Secrets just makes way more sense to put on horror.
Yes,
my eyes.
This is we do have a small argument prepared for this in terms of threat assessment around Verona. Verona looks very at risk to some degree, because it is surrounded and it's in the same system as the UPC and the Church. But the way
I do think
UPC and Acre.
they are.
UPC and Acre.
Our surrounding
regardless.
Our surrounding allies and enemies should probably realize that we'll just delete anybody who attacks us. So,
I think yes, but also there is the sentiment of it's really cool that we can delete anyone who attacks us, but we still have to worry about the house in question of being attacked first.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I'm super happy that like the other house's minor will be able to blow them out of the water, but what happens to Serpents at that point? Like,
yeah. So
I mean, I think that
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Pixis. My apologies. You were
sorry. Okay. With regards to threat from the UPC and Acre, we feel like they are not as great. We have overestimated the threat they present, and Verona isn't in as much immediate danger as we would think. And while Vagrant is closest to Serpents, we are expecting Crux to do a lot of work in protecting the core worlds from Vagrant.
I understand the assessment of the supposed overestimation of Acre specifically. I believe Acre is considerably threatening, but also in a statement of should be understandably able to be reasoned with. And in a lore standpoint, we don't really know about the UPC, so I get that. But at the same time, mechanically, Verona is in danger if there is that statement of saying, okay, the UPC just decides, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna go for them. House Serpents feels that they need to be defended in that way. Like, I understand what you're saying, but putting Psychic Assassins on there, we have they're like the defense of that is not much.
I think another thing we have to consider looking at the other things is, if we want to do some sort of military and some sort of like two types of military and stuff like that, and we want to do the transit web, attacking's really not on our kind of forte at the minute, especially at turn 1. And I think maybe down the line, Psychic Assassins would be better. But currently, we need to think more defensive, because we know it's highly unlikely anyone's going to attack House's Minor turn 1. And sticking Psychic Assassins on turn 1 kind of seems like we, in a sense, are the threat. Mechanically wise, we want to at least give her the reroll so that they have some defensive capabilities if the likelihood of a turn 1 attack can occur.
Well, just to clarify, there was the discussion of the breakdown of planets. The turn 1 attack can't happen; it'd be a turn 2 at earliest.
Except for...
Yeah. Go ahead, Triangle.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, we can attack someone turn 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something else that might be worth considering is that thematically, I think it might be a little bit weird for us to have Psychic Assassins on Verona, given that the Serpens assassin has supposedly turned himself into the church.
Yes.
And I imagine Serpens would not be very aggressively pushing for more assassins at this point in time.
As far as Serpens is concerned, there is only one assassin that is declared being a Serpens, and they are with the church, and we apologize for that incident.
And if I just may ask, I'm not the most well versed in the rules, since that's the reason why it wasn't my proposition that I'm reading, but Blue's. But as far as I understood, the Book of Secrets cannot be moved freely. Correct? You need to facilitate that movement somehow, and if
no,
it can't move itself. So since Lyra is outside the range of the transit web, which would be able to move it, correct, with the transit web. So since Lyra is outside of the transit web, it would be really hard to move the Book of Secrets if it's needed somewhere else. So that was our reasoning behind not even arguing for the Book of Secrets, even though we thought thematically it would make sense for us to have it, being diplomats and, you know, manipulators and stuff. But we realized that placing it on Orpheus would kind of trap it there for the foreseeable future. So that's why we thought Roa would be a better choice for Book of Secrets. One of the reasons, of course.
Also, as a point of note on the assassins, there are only 12 fat creds, which is not that expensive, and we obviously want to try and pick the most expensive assets we can at the beginning when we don't have to pay for them. So it may be a waste to buy something that's only 12 fat creds when we could get something that's like 20 or 30 even.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Agreed.
We'll roll around to it, but that's essentially what our slate is kind of playing into, amongst other things.
Well, I personally feel like there's been quite a lot of strong arguments to suggest that we should go with Book of Secrets on her. In fact, I personally feel like that was the best choice all along. The slate was slightly different. That's fine. And at the very least, it seems like all of you are aligned on the matter, and it doesn't feel like it's worth spending any more time fighting this.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll turn up in the vote, I suppose, but it's probably good to move on.
We'll see what happens. Okay. Next statement. Commodities broker on Tiber. Did we already do this one?
No, we touched upon it. We didn't fully go on to it.
Yeah. There was a statement regarding there's some statements regarding one commodity broker. Some were asking for two. I believe the two was what we discussed regard to the pre-tech manufacturing and the reticulum incident. So going forward with that, there was also now I'm getting mixed up because I'm moving bunch of stuff. So we have okay. So we have essentially a discussion for a few more assets. Okay, cool, got it. So yeah, talking about the commodities broker on Tiber, it seems that we have one commodity broker. There's some questions regarding deep strike landers and a popular movement.
Yes, but there's also, if you're talking about the popular movement in deep strike landers under Lyra's slate, there's also a commodities broker placed on Tiber. So we aren't against placing a commodities broker on Tiber. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I'm trying to read the map appropriately so I can find the next most debated thing, and how it's laid out. I may be reading it the wrong way. Is all that.
Yeah, it's Aquila and.
No, you're reading it right. It's just it's two different interesting perspectives on the same data. Like you can see what's less controversial, but if you don't group it with like the slates, then it can be a little bit misleading, I think.
Yeah, okay. So it's just me being bad at reading data, which is something I already knew, so it's no worries.
Triangulum boys gotcha. No worries.
Yeah, you got me. I'm not here to read data, just the future. Okay, so let me take a look. If Triangulum Boy has figured out the next most hotly debated or not hotly debated asset, they can shout that out for.
It splits up. I think that there are two kind of things that we should discuss, and we'll see what happens in the vote. There's one which is the deep strike landers Lyra's slate has, which I think are outlying in terms of slates. But then the other thing that I think is probably going to be our biggest discussion is whether or not to put Space Marines on Orpheus, and whether or not to put Space Marines or popular movement on Dio Mikado are kind of the two things, if you look at these slates, I think are most controversial.
I think we need to put at least some sort of military unit on Lyra because of the idea of the transit web and the fact that they are outside it.
Yeah, so if I can shed some light on that, because that was one of the things that we debated most, I think, was how to protect Lyra without devoiding the rest of the houses of protection in terms of like the Book of Secrets and some other things. I think the most prevalent argument for Space Marines and Orpheus was that they can move on their own. So if need be, they can, we can spend one faction turn moving them to somewhere else if they're needed, and we would have some protection against force. Most of the reasoning being that, Crux is nearby, and like narratively speaking, it's uncertain what may happen, even though we know that, Crux attacking houses minor with force assets is, a great breach of contract. However, they can pay Deathless to do so, not saying that they will or will not, and some other factions can do so as well. So we thought that it would be prudent to have one force asset on Lyra, and Space Marines made the most sense because they can move on their own, and we can say that, it's an Aquilon asset actually, just on rest on Orpheus.
Mm-hmm.
What's worth, Reticulum's kind of general opinion on this was that it's very unlikely that Lyra is going to be attacked like before turn 2 or 3. And something that we're going to get a lot of clarity on is seeing how other factions place their assets. And one of the reasons why we put Space Marines on Aquila instead of Orpheus or the Lodestone is because it's pretty centrally located. And that if we detect one faction maybe building up to the point where we're uncomfortable, we can just immediately start moving the Space Marines to where they need to go without having them kind of be off in a corner and needing a further amount of travel.
Right.
We were on the same front by the idea that if we put the Space Marines on the Aquilon homeworld, it's the idea that since the transit web and everything, we can move them about, and if there is a threat, they are the best. Yeah, well, the idea that we can freely move them, the idea that we can grab them, take them to other planets.
No, we can't move Space Marines with the transit web.
No, I know I messed up there.
Okay.
But the idea that we can freely put them in the Aquilon homeworld, and like the reason why we put the Damaries on the homeworld of Lyra is it kind of made more sense to us in a defensive standpoint to have them on their units on it.
So I might say that our perspective, our slate has Marines on Orpheus and a popular movement on Dio Mikado. And one of the reasons to put this particular arrangement together, Space Marines are quite good. You could even think of a situation where you replace the Space Marines and just had 2 Space Marines, but one on Lyra, one on Dio Mikado. But the threat that I think that we were trying to keep in mind is it's really not. At least you guys can tell me if this is true. It's not our preference to be attacking anybody. However, we certainly will if we get attacked. In order to do that effectively, a cunning asset like popular movement plays into our strengths a lot better, and we'd be able to move that with the transit web in the core worlds more quickly than, say, a Space Marines, and also use it against a larger variety of factions with less concern. So I think that this was the viewpoint that we were taking.
Yeah. Serpens backs that statement up basically in their proposal.
Although popular movement does do less damage than Space Marines, both I think offensively and defensively, correct? Yeah.
Popular
yes.
movement. Oh, sorry.
It's more of the fact that the popular movement, because of said transit web, will be more mobile than the Space Marines, if I'm understanding correctly. So we sacrifice a little bit of that damage and allow for a little bit more flexibility.
I see.
And also, if we put either popular movement or the demagogue on Orpheus, it's also stuck there until we figure out a way to move them in some future turn, right? The same thing that would happen with the Book of Secrets, correct?
Yes.
Yes. But the popular movement, I believe, was not a question towards putting on Orpheus. I thought
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
I know that the demagogue was, so that's why we
Yeah.
added them both into the mix.
Yeah,
totally.
if Demagogue had become popular, I'd probably argue for popular movement instead. Derek, so I guess you're the one with a lot of thoughts on this. How do you feel about the Space Marines?
You mean as to where we should put them? I mean, I think we were concerned, of course, that Lovelace would come under attack, which was why that was a suggestion. But of course, we have other ways to defend them, and we'll have a transit web on that planet. And then our suggestion for Aquila was basically just lore, and also this fact that they are centrally located, so we can move them around, which is important because we can't move them as far since they can't use the transit web. So I think Aquila Homeworld makes the most sense, Diamakato, but from our standpoint, but we wouldn't be opposed to having them on Lovelace if that felt like it was too exposed.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of just general HP in the way on Lovelace as it is, just with the factories and what was the other?
Yeah.
And with the transit web, that's a lot of just health in general in the way, and we get to select the asset that defends. So it's possible that Lovelace won't need a Space Marine, and that if it does turn out to need one, it could just move there, or we could transit web something else to defend.
And I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in here. We'll probably almost certainly be purchasing an asset on turn 2. I think
Right.
is
Yeah.
I mean, unless somebody really wants to get deleted, in which case we might need to take some time.
Crack some knuckles.
And just because I think that this was Blue's original idea when he was crafting the slate, is that the combination of Deep Strike Landers and Space Marines on Lyra is on Orpheus was what he had in mind, I believe, because if I'm interpreting the rules right, with Deep Strike Landers you could within one turn transport the Space Marines from Orpheus to Loveless, so it could be a reactionary measure, if I'm interpreting the rules correctly, because it's 3 hexes within the placement of the Deep Strike Landers.
So the thing about the Deep Strike Landers in particular, one of the things that I was noting is that we will have an asset purchase on turn 2. I think our consideration with this is that, like, there's also the option of putting an extended theater somewhere in the core world. So it's almost certainly something we're going to do in the near future, right? Either an extended theater or the Deep Strike Landers. I think it's the expense that was my consideration, like when we were talking amongst House Triangulum, is again trying to take advantage of our large amount of creds that we can spend on these initial assets, because like the Deep Strike Landers are, I mean, okay, they're fairly expensive, but
25,
yeah, they're 25.
They're another like non-attacking asset, I think was the other thing about these things. Like,
well, the thing about Deep Strike Landers is, unless I'm mistaken, I do believe they're capable of moving the web. In which case, if we ever need to move that, we have an option for moving the web, which moves everything else. And so that gives us a little bit more flexibility, as well as also giving us an option for moving military units. Like, if we wanted to get grav tanks, which are significantly better at attacking than Space Marines, we'd have to have a way to move them, which something like the Deep Strike Landers could do. Also, again, there's the expense. They're quite a bit more expensive than the things we're likely to buy. Like if we turn 1 buy something like an extended theater, like you said, which I think that's like
10 credits, I believe.
10. Or if we wanted to buy a treachery, that's 10. If we wanted to buy even like a pre-tech infantry or something like that, it's all really pretty cheap compared to a Deep Strike Lander, which if the thing is that we'll eventually need the ability to move force units, unless we only want to buy Space Marines for the rest of time. And I feel like we have to work our way up to purchasing a 25 fat cred asset as opposed to something cheaper like a 10 fat cred asset. It's going to be a lot harder to get that transport later on.
I think one of the things Reticulum discussed kind of what movement unit we're going to want, because I think most people would agree that we will probably buy a unit relatively early, and we'll probably want it to be a unit that can move the transit web, unless we have something come up that changes that plan. And one of the concerns with the Deep Strike Landers is that they're actually like relatively expensive to use per use relative to something like an extended theater. And given the actual layout of our sector, Deep Strike Landers, the extra like 1 hex doesn't help us a huge amount if we're trying to attack, compared to something like an extended theater that would be cheaper both to buy and cheaper to use. The other downside, I think someone mentioned this with the Deep Strike Landers, is that they have no form of counterattack at all. And so it's a lot of money to be paying for 1 extra hex.
Yeah, well, I don't think the hex of movement is really the reason to buy it as much as the ability to move force assets, since we won't have that ability without the web, and only Space Marines have that ability, even though they're less effective than pre-tech infantry or grav tanks. So I think the idea is that we can invest in better military or force assets if we have one later down the line, and also it allows us to have more flexibility with the web in being able to move the web with it.
I think the whole point of that is that the difference between a Deep Strike Landers and something like, say, an extended theater is essentially only that, or at least for our purposes, probably only the 1 hex, and that the Deep Strike Landers costs more to use. Obviously, if we decide we want to declare war on someone, then the Deep Strike Landers are more useful.
If we can, I believe Nivilian has a statement they want to make.
I was thinking when it comes to Deep Strike Lander, it would probably be better off if we consider it later on, because at the minute we want to like think about getting forces before like wanting to move any. And I feel like if we do use a Deep Strike Lander for turn 1, like you said, the whole idea is it has no counterattack, and it's better off if we prepare it later on and consider it as a later asset, where when we want to move units. At the minute, I would rather arm ourselves more than anything else.
Right, although there is a consideration that the extended theater is less than half of the cost of Deep Strike Landers, and so we could easily purchase them ourselves. And also, the Deep Strike Landers allow you to move assets even if the government doesn't allow you. Now, this is something I'm not entirely familiar with, but the Deep Strike Landers, are they capable of moving themselves, I assume?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, is the extended theater capable of moving itself?
I believe so.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because I knew narratively that seemed kind of strange, but I didn't know how mechanically it worked. So, okay, if they can both move themselves, then I think Deep Strike Landers, really the argument for that is mostly just it's the more expensive one, and it allows us the aggressive option, which we won't need initially, but we'll be able to more easily afford in the beginning than an extended.
Yeah, I think the argument is really, do we need the movement unit now, or can we wait to buy it on turn 2?
And if I was just going to add one thing, that the extended theater wouldn't be able to move Space Marines off of Orpheus if it was placed on Tiber. As I said, this all hinges on the fact that this is the Deep Strike Landers are placed on Tiber, while the Space Marines are placed on Orpheus, so they could be moved from Orpheus anywhere else in our sector of the minor houses, I guess. I don't know, our piece
Empire.
of the sector. Yeah, anywhere in the Empire. Yeah, but if it was what's it called, the extended theater, then we would have to use a move for the Space Marines to get them closer, then move them from Tiber. Of course, again, hinging on the fact that it's on Tiber. But with the Deep Landers, you can move them from Tiber to Lovelace, or from Orpheus to Lovelace in one turn.
Yeah, I'd also note, looking at this, that the extended theater is one of the best HP per fat cred exchanges in the book, now that I look at it. It costs 10 creds, I think.
Yeah, it's 10 creds for 10 HP.
And it has 10 HP, which I think is better than almost anything.
So planetary defenses are better, but that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, but those only work against starships, right?
Yeah.
So speaking from a more, I suppose, fictional and philosophical position, starting with deep strike landers is kind of an aggressive move, which Pixis is wary of. We don't really want to start on a footing which threatens others. And starting with deep strike landers is essentially a statement of intent, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if we use one of our first assets to get one of the most effective ways to attack another faction, that means that we're telling everyone that they have to consider us as a threat.
I'd also say, sorry, go ahead.
I just don't see a reason for us to get a deep strike lander turn 1, mainly because we have no reason to move units currently, and getting something that's moving units feels like almost a waste in that sense of we're kind of focusing on trying to build up, because that's what we're doing with the pre-tech labs and the transit web, is we're readying ourselves. And I feel like getting something that moves units kind of doesn't make sense if we're not readied with units themselves.
Well, we will have some units, and the idea with the deep strike landers is to allow us to react by moving the web, which most of our units can be moved by the web. So if we can move the web, that means we can cover even the parts of the Empire that aren't covered by the web initially pretty easily. So that was their idea originally with deep strike landers, and obviously they'll be useful later on. But in the initial turns, it's more about having the ability to immediately move not only force assets, but also non-force assets by way of moving the web. In case the web comes under heavy attack for some reason, if somehow Lovelace comes under attack that's dangerous enough that we need to move the web, because I don't think the web has very much health, then we could move it somewhere else. Or if we get attacked somewhere we don't expect, then we can move the web and instantly have access to that portion of the Empire.
Okay.
One thing.
If I may, I believe there's been a decent amount of discussion regarding this specific stuff, but there was also questions that Xavier was bringing up. If we feel appropriate that this has been discussed an appropriate amount, that we all can make kind of like an informed decision on it. If not, we can continue discussing this, or do we want to move on to these questions?
If I may propose, maybe the first thing to discuss is to decide upon is the placement of Space Marines on Orpheus, because if they're not indeed placed on Orpheus, then it's kind of perhaps unnecessary to have the deep strike landers in the first place.
Okay.
In a way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Reticulum, please go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, so I think the one thing we might want to consider is that we're probably never going to want to move Space Marines to Lovelace, because we'll be starting probably with a transit web and 2 pre-tech manufactories. And pre-tech manufactories are incredible HP sinks. They have 16 HP. And when a planet is attacked, the defender chooses what to defend with. So a faction can't just come kill our transit web. So we would have a long time to react to any attack onto Lovelace.
Oh, so we can defend the transit web with pre-tech.
Yeah, we choose what to defend with.
Yes.
It doesn't even have to be the same unit type. Like, we can defend a force. If someone's rolling force versus force against us, we can defend with a cunning or a wealth asset.
Right, and they would need a lot of damage, right?
Yeah.
I think you were cutting out a little bit there.
The attacker chooses the stats that go into the roll, and that's it. The defender chooses the asset.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, my suggestion was more along something unexpected, where maybe even multiple factions ended up teaming up on the same planet. Yeah, obviously it wouldn't be at risk unless something excessive happened.
I think we will see.
Probably not in early turns either.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the question is
that would be hard to muster that early on.
Yeah, it feels like our concern is maybe a little bit more long term, and so then it might be better suited to get a non-moving asset early and then buy a moving asset later, if we're not worried about needing to use it right away.
Yeah, that was my understanding. That I don't think we need to move units currently, for sure.
Okay. I think Tranium, you were trying to say something before. I don't know if you're able to say it now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You've been cutting out sometimes.
I'm gonna have to get a new mic at some point. I was just pointing out the statistical rules associated with defending, so that the attacker chooses the stats that go into the roll. But that's the only interesting element of that. The defender chooses the defending asset, and what stat the defending asset is immaterial.
Okay, thank you. So does everyone feel like that the Deep Space Lander situation and that was discussed, and we can move on to some questions that were presented to us by Xavier?
Yeah, I think we've had enough discussion on it. If my cohorts can agree.
Yeah, I don't think I can add necessarily anything to the discussion more. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. The one thing I wanted to bring up from chat that I didn't hear from you all is that they did mention there is the refit action. So if we had a lower level force unit, we wouldn't have to spend the full cost to upgrade. We could pay a reduced cost. And nobody just mentioned that. So since it came up in a couple chat, I wanted to bring that up for everybody to consider.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else brought up from chat, or is that it?
Nope, that's it so far.
Okay, cool. So let's take a look at our beautiful little heat map again.
Well, what I think that this, if you can hear me, I think what the Lyra representative brought up was kind of actually what we started on, right? Was about popular movement versus demagogue versus Space Marines, and this kind of transitioned into the Deep Strike Landers and everything. But has everybody said everything they want to say about the Space Marines being on Dio Mikado versus a popular movement or demagogue on Orpheus?
I have one thing to add as
Sure thing.
Pixis.
Yeah.
So with regards to the point from Lyra about not being able to move their asset off of Orpheus, it is possible to put Lodestone in a position where we can link up a sort of connection, and it would take a couple of turns, but it would be a perfectly feasible thing for us to do, to have an extended theater on Lodestone on, sorry, I'm trying to read, it's very low resolution, 0904, and from there you can extended theater and then at a later date transit web to wherever, and we can move things around like that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what's Pix's plan, or I'm not sure how are we going. Is Pixis deciding where Lodestone's going, or is this also supposed to be a council decision?
Pixis knows where Lodestone is going.
Okay.
You can't control us even if you want to.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't even gonna suggest. I was just absent for the last meeting, so I just didn't wanna presume anything. But
Yeah.
cool. If you think that's a feasible strategy, then as I said,
that's the direction we're going. So.
Yeah, our main concern was that any assets that could not move them on their own would be, I won't say wasted on Orpheus, because I'm sure we can figure something out, right? But that they would be trapped for a while at least, which is until, I guess, Lodestone comes in range.
So if I had one comment on this, on the popular movement versus Space Marines front, I'm very much of the opinion that mechanically the Space Marines on Orpheus and popular movement on Dio Mikado is mechanically the better thing to do, and am pretty resolute that not to do 2 Space Marines for those 2 slots. So that would be my comment on those, because giving up too many cunning type potential attacks, I think, and also stuff that we can move for defense. The popular movement could be moved within transit web range for defense, and is very beefy. So
out of curiosity, what is the like in-game explanation for popular movement on Aquila Homeworld?
I believe we had one for this.
I was wondering the same thing. Yeah.
Because just while you're finding that, I thought my understanding of what Adam decided in the sector creation is that Aquila's homeworld was generally pretty low, relatively lightly populated, because
we have
most of their population was spread out in the legions out throughout the galaxy.
So the suggestion from one of our members, was that there has been a planet-wide surge in enlistment as a nationalist media campaign succeeds in motivating people to think it.
I suppose that's possible. Although I think the population on the planet was so small that I feel like lore-wise, those who were willing to enlist probably already did, and probably also those not willing to, honestly. Because I feel like the population on that planet, if we pulled too many people off, there wouldn't be an infrastructure on the planet anymore. It's just we had a really, really low population to begin with. So that might be strange. I feel like we have to get a lot of our numbers from other worlds.
And you lost a
Yeah, we lost a lot of.
You lost a bunch of synths, yeah, that were supposed to be there. I mean,
Yeah,
you could always say that
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
there was, well, started at the same time, but I was going to say we could also say that there was an initiative to move people from Imperial Prime to Aquila Homeworld in order to repopulate. We could come up with something that makes sense, especially Lyra being the master propagandists that we are. But I mean,
matchmaker, make us a match.
Yes, yes. Maybe there's a huge Cinder need on Aquila's homeworld.
Monty has threatened to just close down Cinder unless.
Oh no!
Yeah, I guess it feels to me like that, lore-wise, feels like maybe a little bit more of a stretch than most of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we
definitely a better fit.
I think Space Marines on Aquila's homeworld is a better fit for the military standpoint and the mechanics military standpoint, and also the flavor standpoint of it. Just seems they are better situated on Aquila's homeworld more than anything.
Yeah,
especially because the primary force threat will be Vagrant, and then potentially further down the line, not that we would ever fight our cousins, Crux.
Yeah, I feel like it's very limiting if we commit the Marines to Lyra and then we don't need them. It'll take us quite a long time to get them into the game in other areas.
I mean, even at that point, if we are considering moving units later down the turn lines, it makes more sense for us to at least put them in a position where our current units at least have a area where they can be more functional. Because as you said, we don't know if Lyra is going to be the target or Aquila is going to be the target. It's better off if we start off with Aquila, because at least we know, any standpoint, we have a good situation with Space Marines on them.
So here's the only consideration I have about this, which is that if you put Space Marines and a cunning/wealth, or you put Space Marines and Mikado, and you put a cunning/wealth asset on Orpheus, then we have one attacking asset, I think, in essentially everyone's slate, no matter how you slice that. We have one asset capable of an attack that is movable with the transit web on turn 1 and 2, and that's a commodities broker. Right? So something to keep in mind is everything else doesn't have attacks. There would maybe be assets that we could move off of the lodestone, but it has to take a turn to get into range.
Also, I mean, I'm going to perhaps put my foot down a little here. There will not be an asset which can attack on lodestone. That's something we're very clear about.
Do you mean a force asset or just any asset?
An asset which we deem sort of geared for an offensive purpose. We can talk more about this later.
Because I think something to consider is lots of assets can attack that maybe aren't considered aggressive.
Yeah, lawyers can attack, but they're not aggressive attacks. They're lawyers.
I mean, we're not. I don't think that any of us are really anticipating aggressive movement at the moment. I have emphasized, of course, that we're willing to consider it, I think, if we're threatened for any reason. But it's not really our intent to be attacking people early on.
I don't think there's any situation where that benefits us unless
is
in a position where we need to.
Yeah, I think it was more asking for clarification on the statement that Pixis was making on the term aggressive or attack that I was looking for on that statement. But yes, I agree with the statement that we're not looking to start a fight, but we'll finish one.
Oh yeah, no, I think I should be really clear. Like on turn one, we really don't want anything that even like our slate. We don't have anything that can make an attack on Lodestone, and we want to try and remain essentially as civilian as possible.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And so, like, as far as possible, avoid having anything that even has an attack action on Lodestone.
I think that, I mean, we can probably have a topic of conversation on this. That might be kind of difficult. I think
Yeah, this is something we will talk about later. But
Yeah,
it was relevant now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll have a conversation about
and
that.
I think we've probably said most of what's going to be said about the Marines versus.
Yeah.
I guess there's this question of, in my mind, no matter what, we shouldn't have like two Space Marines between the Orpheus Dio Mikado thing.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
But we do
So
want
I-
one.
Go ahead.
Right?
Yeah, we want one, but not.
Yeah, we want one Space Marine situated somewhere. It's just the preference on where we want the Space Marine situated is what we need to figure out.
Okay.
Is what I'm thinking we're getting at.
I think
yes.
so. And so the other cunning asset that's in that pool is either a demagogue or a popular movement as well. I'm favorable to the popular movement because we've given away a little bit of HP by taking the commodities broker. It has 10 versus 16, but it has a good special, right? So this is kind of my consideration when we were talking this over in Triangulum was, okay, the commodities broker is good and it has decent HP, but if we take too many of these 10 HP assets versus 16, that has a potential to be kind of squicky at some point. They're much easier to kill at 10 than 16.
Yeah. So, sorry, but you are arguing for demagogue over popular movement, right? So special over some extra HP.
Where
I think the opposite.
Opposite.
Movement
Okay.
Over demagogue.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a good
Gotcha.
question.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was because you started off with it has a special, and I was thinking that you were arguing for demagogue, and so I wanted to clear
No,
out. Okay.
sorry, I probably should have been more clear. Yeah, no, I'm saying that I'm comparing the demagogue to commodities brokers and saying that kind of we don't want to take too many things that are in the bucket commodities brokers and demagogues and other 10 HP assets, especially when we're already getting a transit web, which is very good, but also has low HP.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is understandable. I think we don't want to get too specialized. Like thinking about like the situation, it is probably better if we try and not get a demagogue that as well as what we've currently got specialized. But then, like on the other front, it's like how much HP do we want to gain this as well?
There's also the consideration that a popular movement always grants any asset purchase or movement request made by the faction. I think the reason we put the popular movement on Imperial Prime was so we'd always have access to that TO5 world, even if something were to happen eventually down the line to Lovelace, or even if we just wanted to have multiple options for where to spawn something TO5, then we wouldn't have to ever worry about running into an issue with that.
Have we confirmed with Adam that Imperial Prime is not immune to that rule?
Which rule specifically?
That popular movement could just let us buy whatever we want there?
So my understanding of what Adam has told us mechanically is that the houses are not allowed to use Imperial Prime as a TL5 location, that only the Imperial House gets that power.
Yeah, that was
So
kind of what I
even
was worried about.
Yeah, we're not allowed to put a base of influence on Imperial
I
Prime.
was under the impression we just weren't allowed to put a base of it. Okay.
I think that's worth clarifying to be sure.
Okay. If we want to have someone write that up, like the specific question, and I'll shoot that over to Adam.
I would say that even if it isn't immune, it's perhaps too much of a risk to actually seize control of Imperial Prime's government. That would probably get the other houses very angry.
Yeah, no, I mean
It's
it
not
doesn't
that, no.
attack it. It just allows you to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the special is like
Well, the
seize
the stuff that we'd be putting on with the special would be force assets, because the force assets are the only ones with planetary government tags anyway. So they'd be like grav tank formations. So if we did that, we'd absolutely be starting shit, because it'd be like we're moving the Synderium grav tanks onto, like, you know.
Well, maybe
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
very
moving them
scary.
there, and more that we're purchasing them there and moving them.
Well, like fictionally, what it means is that we've seized control in some way. Like we are manipulating the people of Prime to like build tanks and things.
Yeah, or taking the Imperial Legion's tanks for our own uses. Perhaps, Aquila has access to some, or whatever, narratively speaking, right?
Yeah, I mean, based on the description of the asset, it just says a planet-wide surge of enthusiasm. So it actually sounds like basically the planet is just happy enough with you that they'll allow you to do these things. So nothing about it seems aggressive, but
It
it
says
would probably
controlled
be
by the faction, though, which to me at least suggests like kind of a Machiavellian puppet master behind it all.
Well, it's for a cause controlled
for
by
a
the
cause
faction.
controlled by them. Yeah.
It seems like that would, like, despite what the asset says, I think anytime we would use that on Imperial Prime, that would be a big red flag to everyone nearby.
Yeah, because Imperial Prime is basically the planet for everyone, where no one can technically own it. So I feel like us basically jamming units or jamming anything on it is basically saying we have plans and we don't want to basically open up and say this is what we're doing, because though it doesn't state as an aggressive move, it can very much be taken as an aggressive move since it is a commutal planet.
Right.
Diplomatically speaking, if not mechanically speaking, it could be perceived as an aggressive move, yeah.
Yes.
Although that's essentially proposing that no one use that planet for anything rather than all for something. Which, I mean, if that's what you think makes more sense, that's fine by me, I suppose. But
I seem to remember Adam saying that we can buy any TL4 asset on Imperial Prime specifically.
I sent the question over to ask for
Yeah.
clarification. We'll
Awesome.
get that when it happens.
Awesome. And even if we are allowed, even if TL5 assets are allowed, maybe purchasing force assets on Imperial Prime would never be such a good idea. But, cunning assets and wealth assets, you can't really, those are kind of half hidden, right? You're just having diplomats pass through or whatever, right? Especially if we notify the other houses, perhaps, if we want to do something on Imperial Prime and we notify Crux, Vela, and Fornax beforehand and say, listen, we want to, in character, for flavor, we say we would like noble brothers and sisters and cousins, we would like to, I don't know, ask the people of Imperial Prime to enlist in our popular movement, insert random name of popular movement here.
Yeah.
Would that be all right with you, noble cousins and stuff like that?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, even if we were doing force, it could probably be like, look, the sector's in trouble. We need to dip into the Imperial Armada or whatever and pull these forces off-world.
I think this is
something like that.
I think this is another thing to look down to later turns, though, more than anything, rather than consider any sort of strategic thing right now.
Yeah,
it's possible.
I think we just need to decide like what kind of unit do we want to, in this situation, start off with. And to my understanding, it looks like we're not going with Denmark. Yours, am I correct? Or are we still on the fence?
I'm sorry, you broke for a second and I didn't hear. With what?
Like, what kind of position do we want to take right now, is what I'm wondering. Like, to my understanding, we aren't planning on doing any Imperial. I wouldn't recommend doing anything with Imperial Prime right now. Or
I don't think we would do anything quickly.
Or are we considering it? So I'm trying to understand right
I think seizing Imperial Prime is quite a dramatic move.
now. Yeah.
I think it's a long-term option is what the popular movement gives us, rather than any sort of short-term move.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
definitely a long-term suggestion.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, what kind of, are we going to look towards the long term then? Because if we do, we want to perhaps consider popular movement more.
I'm not big on putting anything on Imperial Prime in this first slate. We'll have stuff in web range, and we can move it if we really want to.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Agreed.
put anything on Imperial Prime. I'm saying, like, do we want to look to the long term of, like, considerations? That's why do we want to look at those long considerations for popular movement.
They do also have more health, as was mentioned earlier.
Okay, so if I may, just for clarification's sake, when you say long term, do you mean like within 5 turns would we like to place a popular movement on Imperial Prime, or do you think placing it right now for long-term effect?
No, I'm like in 5 turns. Do we ever want to like move in the popular movement onto it? I'm saying like right now, do we want to get a popular movement for that forward planning, but just not put it on Imperial Prime in this current state of mind? If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, basically just saying, do we want to invest into a long-term?
Yeah.
Something
Like,
that
are our current plans investing into a long-term solution? Because if we are focusing on long-term, that's when we should consider getting popular. If we are trying to think more short-term, is when we should consider what are we doing with our units.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I have nothing to say, but we can move forward on discussing something else. It's just my dog is being an asshole.
Yeah, my next question is what other assets are there that we want to discuss before we vote?
I believe the only assets that are on the list that haven't been discussed is one proposal calls for a strike fleet, and another proposal has integral protocols. I don't know what slates they were on, so I don't know if those are ones that have been heavily discussed. But that's the only thing I can find.
Yeah, Eridanus wanted strike fleet on Lodestone.
Lodestone discussion, yeah.
Yeah,
I get the feeling that a strike fleet on Lodestone will not fly with Pixis.
I feel like from our current discussion, like strike fleet's kind of been null and void from the whole idea of Pixis want to be like more neutral party anyway. So I think we don't need to discuss the strike fleet after the current conversation we've had.
Topic kind of more generally is what to put on Lodestone, if anything, right? Kind of topic needs to happen.
Well, in that case, I mean, the way that we see it currently when we're looking at the proposals is there's our proposal of the integral protocols and then the other idea of popular movement. And so, like, we get the idea of popular movement. I mean, not narratively. Narratively, we no, but mechanically, we kind of get it. Like, it's quite a good use of credits and it's versatile. But the way that we're positioning ourselves is, well, not necessarily neutral. We are primarily concerned about keeping Lodestone really safe. And we also don't think Lodestone is a primary target for anybody currently.
Well, you say that, but you're one of the most vulnerable targets out of all of us. You're within range for a few different people to move something onto Lodestone turn 1 before we can get it in range, and if they move first turn 2, they could just wipe out the base of influence there.
As far as I understand, the only faction which can jump us turn 1 is Crux, which would be, in our opinion, a shocking move.
Anybody can put stuff on the planets that aren't claimed by anybody else.
Oh yes, that's true.
And I think there's a planet that leaves a couple of the assets.
0804.
Yeah. And Lothan sounds like a prime target for House Vagrant, to be perfectly honest. Like a space station, huge space station, jam-packed with ships.
I couldn't hear House Vagrant.
So one thing I may just throw out about integral protocols, if we commit to integral protocols, so they have to start on Lovelace, right? That means that our first turn, our use of the transit web, so they can't be used with the transit web. So we could not get them to Lodestone on turn 1. So we would need another asset, and then we'd also need to basically commit to using that asset on turn 1. That's a very, very committal thing. And then if we went second after someone else, then it would just Lodestone can't actually be attacked on turn 1, right? Only on turn 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would just be very, very committal.
Right. I mean, the real concern is, I believe that we've discussed it, and they can move into 0503, which is within web range on turn 1. The concern is that if someone puts stuff on 0601, 0804, or if they're totally insane and have enough force, there are a few that are 3 jumps away that you could move with Deep Strike Landers. And they can move almost anything with a high attack onto Lodestone. And we would be betting against whether or not we move before that faction to move with the web something to defend Lodestone. Otherwise, you could just literally have Lodestone's base of influence pop instantly.
Yeah, and also, like, integral protocols can only defend against cutting attacks, and most likely, I don't have the faction strength up right now, but I'm guessing that the people who would be attacking us might try to attack with stuff other than cunning.
Yes. People to be concerned about with cunning are, like, Prism, Red Dogs, I believe, the Church, the High Church, I should say, and Vela have relatively high cunning.
I would imagine that Vagrant involved, it would probably be with force more than cunning stuff.
Yeah, we don't need to consider Vela anyway in this current state of time. I feel like
pulling off all the potential options.
Yeah, I know. I'm
do
just
see
saying.
Prism and Red Dogs as our sort of primary threats.
Yeah, it feels like it's so risky to rely on that as a defensive option, as opposed to putting something else that could defend more. But that could be like a defensive buffer that then lets you, if you're attacked, come into range and be defended by like the transit web or something else.
I suppose the large problem is that the entirety of House Pixis doesn't believe in a popular movement as a viable narrative asset. Pixis is like entirely set. It doesn't really care to actually get involved in politics if at all possible, because you have to have a large political movement. You have to have a lot of meetings and sit around and not be in space. And all of those things are just completely anathema to the house.
I mean, I think that we'd all like to make sure you're safe while still having something that's agreeable to everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other thing is, like, and obviously I assume this is something you discussed a lot in your house, but like a popular movement does not need to be a political thing. You could, Pixis could have a popular movement for leave us the fuck alone. I think that is a valid popular movement.
Yeah, it literally just says any cause that you're taking up, which could literally be in.
Yeah, I mean, the cause could be we want to go explore the galaxy, and if you try and stop us, then you're against us. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I also don't think it insinuates politics. I mean, you could just have a really charismatic leader or up a large people, and I mean, I guess that's somewhat politics, but no, it's not sitting in.
It certainly could be political, but it doesn't have to be.
I think another thing is
other narrative reasons.
I think another thing is, though, like fictionally, you guys are like, we'd rather not be in politics. We always got to look at the mechanical standpoint of a popular movement is very beneficial to us, and that even though you want to like stay out of the way of this and the popular movement doesn't make sense, it mechanically it does make sense for us to get it now and build upon it.
Yeah,
if you understand.
I think most of the assets can be like into a narrative sense. And I'm also, if I can ask, I'm getting some feedback on my mic. Are you hearing anything on everyone else's end?
Everyone sounds fine.
You sound okay.
Okay, thank you. I've literally been sitting trying to fix that.
No, you sound fine.
Cool. So I think from what I'm understanding from the intermittent conversation that I'm having regarding Pixis and the popular movement is brought up with the statement that a popular movement is like apolitical in that sense. It's just what the general public believes. It's not the Klaus said. Sorry, I'll never get your name. It is it's about Pixis believing a specific thing, and mechanically that lets us do certain things. If I'm understanding the conversation that is happening, I just wanted to get clear.
Thank you.
So, it was discussed in the house that we could have like, we really love exploration, or it's, it is like a sort of, we just want to be ourselves kind of further. But we then talked about how what would happen with the popular movement is it would go somewhere and it would probably attack something, and we didn't see those ideas as meshing and really functioning at all.
I think the way that asset is supposed to be kind of in lore thought about is if it moves, then kind of the money backing whatever propaganda was encouraging a particularly strong popular movement vanishes. And so if it goes somewhere else, it kind of becomes a different movement, right?
Yeah, it's if I'm understanding the rules of the asset itself, it's less when a popular movement moves, it's less of all of the people on that planet who believe that one thing move to planet 2. It's, hey, all these people on planet 2 believe this one thing, let's give them $100.
Which also isn't something Pixis would do. That's the thing. Like, we wouldn't try and influence other people's governments.
I mean, I don't think.
And also, we wouldn't like be interested in being influenced. Like, if someone came to us and said, "Here, have like $50 for not liking House Crux," we'd be like, "We have all the money in the world, and we don't really care about what you think."
Yeah, I still think we do need to consider this more from. I get the understanding of like from a law perspective, your guys wouldn't be into it, but I do think we need to consider both the law and mechanical perspective, and the mechanical perspective when it comes to this is very beneficial to all of us.
I absolutely agree, but the problem is with popular movement specifically is it's so wrong that for fiction we're willing to bend a little around, but we feel like it just really doesn't work.
Well, so it sounds like popular movements, whatever, we can talk about that more, but like what would an alternative be to the popular movement? Because I think mechanically most of us would agree that an integral protocol just doesn't accomplish doesn't really benefit very much. Is there something else that we could consider?
We are currently talking about this in our sort of chat. There was a suggestion to postpone this discussion for a while we talk it over. So
the vote's today.
Oh no, I mean postpone
okay,
it temporarily during the meeting.
Like I sounded like an ass then. I apologize.
Oh, don't worry, I wasn't being clear.
Yes, do we have any other assets that need to be discussed?
I believe we do.
I believe this is the second conversation of what to do. I believe every other discussion has been done, as far as I'm aware. Unless someone has any other points to be raised.
I was just going to say about the one last little note about popular movement is that, it could be outside of Pixis control, perhaps in the sense that it perhaps lasts for a month, that some group of people comes in and starts proselytizing any particular idea, and that Pixis is like, who are these people, what are they doing? And in fact it's either Serpents, Lyra, whoever that sent somebody to help you, air quotes, without you knowing. If you want to justify it, I'm not saying that you should accept it as I'm saying. I'm just saying if you need some other justification that's not like we created this popular movement, maybe it was created for you.
Yeah. I think the discussion here is to allow for Pixis to have some time to discuss that within their stuff. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and then come back, and if Pixis has not gotten an explanation, we're going to move on to discussing goals, because it seems that most of our assets are taken care of, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah. That would be great, thanks.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll circle back and take a vote after the goal selection so that Pixis can come up with an alternative.
Sure thing. Gotcha. So we'll be coming back at 5:30-ish? No, I'm mathing wrong.
Just about that.
Yeah, okay. 5:30-ish.
So 10:30.
Yeah, about 5 minutes from now.
Other time zones, get out of here.
The
7
nearest
minutes.
half hour.
7 minutes.
The nearest half hour. For anybody, it should be your nearest half hour. All right, and we are back from our short recess. So we're going to go through the list and have everybody reintroduce themselves. In case you've joined us halfway through, you can figure out who is who. So I'll let the speaker take it away.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing us to have that 5-minute break. We were all very grateful for it. I am High Nominator Ophidian Ivor of House Serpents. Lyra, if you want to go away.
Yep, I'm Horace Lyra no Mikoto Emiya. I'm currently subbing for Merit Lyra Pygmalion Blue.
Triangulum.
The synchronous triangulum Ursan hyperbolus. It's triangle.
Yeah. Aquila.
It looks like the Aquilin rep is still...
Apologies, I tried to unmute and it didn't work. I am Praetor Adler Derek.
Pixis.
I am the Orator of the Rose, Mootseeker Pixis Taberna Anu. Most embarrassed of the council representatives.
Reticulum.
I'm Shinkan Reticulum Pert.
Eridanus.
Trivox Eridanus Klaus Damocles Nivilian.
Okay, so going forward, I believe, Pixis, you had said previously that you had come to an agreement on the previous conversation, but we were still going to move ahead with goals rather than asset discussion. Asset discussion. Never will get. Is that still going forward, or do we want to continue with asset conversation?
We think we have a pretty unobjectionable asset proposal, which everyone can get going. I mean, we can set a 5-minute limit on it if we want, and then come back to it later if that's necessary.
Yeah, if you want to propose it, and then we'll let 5 minutes go for 5 minutes, and then we'll go to goals and then come back.
Cool. So Pixis wants to fall back on our sort of secondary proposal, which is obviously not listed, which is transport lockdown instead. It does pretty similar things to what Integral did, but is perhaps better suited to what the council as a whole wants. It's it's purely defensive asset. It does have an attack technically, but is, at least to our eyes, not the kind of thing which can be used to really assault anybody. And it works lore-wise because, of course, it's controlling shipping lanes and routes. So it could even be that we've simply just used our star charts to just hide somewhere in that hex where people don't usually know how to get to. And it's high cost, so it's optimal. It's not quite as high cost as we'd like, which is largely why we turned it down. But nevertheless, we think it's a pretty good proposal. It's good hit point sync too.
Okay. Any other comments you want to make, or?
Beyond that, I think just sort of any questions.
Okay. So questions open to House Pixis.
So if that mean that you're proposing the same slate that you had previously, but with the integral pro.
And we would start transport lockdown on Lodestone turn 1.
But you'd like to keep the rest of your slate the same.
Yes, well, I mean, earlier on, I feel like we conceded the Psychic Assassins and Book of Secrets stuff anyway, so.
So yeah, I mean, I think that there will be some opportunity before the vote that perhaps we shouldn't do it publicly for people to amend the slates that we actually. So, okay. I mean, that's probably important to know at this point in the discussion, what we're doing with Pixis, but fantastic. Sorry, I just wanted to check on that because the way this vote runs down is a particular way. I don't know if I'll go over the details. So.
Okay. Cool. So if there's no other questions towards House Pixis, I think we can discuss goals now.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I was looking through all the proposals, there seems to be mainly discussion regarding Peaceable Kingdom and Blood the Enemy.
So to open this up, I can actually be surprisingly inflexible in this circumstance. We had a vote in Triangulum and Blood the Enemy won. So.
Okay. Was that? Do you have a There's a lawnmower behind me.
So I see the House Serpents has no proposed goal. Was that intentional?
Yes.
Okay.
So here, make the case for Blood the Enemy. It was my personal choice, but we held a vote because these were the two that seemed to be the most popular. So the generic thing is there are a few different considerations, right? Here's the reason. There are a few cons to Peaceful Kingdom that we were concerned about. The first is that we don't have much control over whether we complete that or not. If we need to attack someone, then it's going to be, we're going to need to attack them, and it's probably going to override any desires about the goal. Part of that calculation is it's very hard for us to level up. Unless this show runs longer than pretty much any other roleplay show, us leveling up any of our stats takes 20 XP. So that's, 20 XP of difficulty in goals finished. So this is mostly a narrative choice, or kind of, it's a little bit of that contextualizes the choices, maybe what I should say about this. The reason we went with Blood the Enemy is because, one, it doesn't take consecutive turns. It's certainly accomplishable. All it is 21 damage afflicted to enemy assets or bases. So that's not too much in the grand scheme of things. We could complete that within a reasonable amount of time. It's 2 difficulty, and it reaffirms our commitment that I've talked about before. I think that the way someone put this that was pretty good was, we're not looking to start any fights, but we will certainly finish them. And I feel like Peaceable Kingdom might give someone the mistaken impression that we're not going to do that.
That was me. I'll take credit for that cool statement. But just a clarification, rules clarification from Adam regarding Peaceful Kingdom, just that is open to the discussion here. Peaceful Kingdom is specific faction versus faction attacks. Paying a faction to attack another faction does not break the Peaceful Kingdom goal. Just wanted to bring that up. It's just pertaining to the conversation going forward. So like, if we hire the Deathless, we can still accomplish Peaceful Kingdom.
For what it's worth, Reticulum's conversation about goals is almost exactly in line with what Triangulum just kind of explained.
Yeah, Aquila had pretty much the same conversation. It's the most flexible and also gives more XP while also being contributed to by pretty much any interaction with another faction. So it seems to make sense.
Pixis is pretty strongly against Blood the Enemy. We also had a vote, and Peaceable Kingdom won. We didn't have a vote between Blood the Enemy and Peaceable Kingdom because Blood the Enemy wasn't proposed by anybody. We have a lot of problems with it. One of them being that we don't see the goals for our faction as something that is mechanically relevant. For the obvious point that was made just earlier, that the likelihood of us ever leveling up is so low that the potential to actually complete a goal is irrelevant to us.
So
it will never affect us.
That was something we had discussed. I think one of our big concerns about Peaceable Kingdom is that thematically, if we are Peaceable Kingdom and then get in a position where we are mechanically and thematically very much against someone, so just for the sake of an example, let's say that something happens between us and Acre on turn 2 or turn 3, and all of a sudden we are angry at Acre and we want to fight them. It would feel very weird thematically for us to say, okay, well, we're going to hold on to Peaceable Kingdom, but we're going to start attacking Acre.
So
and the problem with that is it takes an entire faction turn to change your goal if you do not accomplish it.
So to my understanding is you don't want to consider Peaceful Kingdom because it feels like it's locking us too much down for any future scenarios in those 4 turns to say, oh, this person's become a recent threat, we should consider them.
Basically, yeah. And with Blood the Enemy is not something that needs to be offensive. We can justify Blood the Enemy as we are very nervous with the state of the sector given all the crazy shit that's just happened. If you try and fuck with us, we are going to defend ourselves very carefully.
So
if
an
I may
example.
ask, sorry. Just a clarification on Blood the Enemy. The damage that is dealt by Blood the Enemy, can that be done on counterattack as well
Yes.
as? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I wanted
So-
that clarification.
Yeah, so just a quick clarification. Yes, we can attack with Peaceful Kingdom, but if we were to go on like a war campaign while our goal being Peaceful Kingdom, that would feel very cheesy, like very out of character, and I would not be super in favor of that.
So my response to that is twofold. First of all, is a mechanical response in that the likelihood of us being able to start a campaign of war within 4 turns is really low, because we have 8 assets and 7 bases, and so any attack that we make exposes us immediately, and so that we can't really project the force necessary to make a serious campaign to begin with. Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to counter your point about the 8 assets. Is you have to bear in mind that it's 8 starting assets, and later turns we will gain more assets. Bear in mind.
That is true, but we can only buy 1 a turn. So
Yeah.
to start any real offensive campaign, we need enough assets, and to get those in 4 turns would be really hard.
If I may, there's something that was pointed out to me by a member of my house, is that Adam supposedly said that hiring another faction to perform attacks would not be perceived as a breaking of the Peaceable Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, if we are in a position that we need to defend ourselves in terms of like making offensive movements, we could always trade with either the Deathless, meaning just pay them off, because I don't think the Deathless would necessarily be motivated to attack the minor houses anytime soon, in my opinion, because it would be a huge investment of diplomatic power on their part, because they would essentially be attacking the empire as a whole. So I don't think that is necessarily a threat. The only viable threats that I see in the first 4 turns are perhaps the UPC and House Vagrant, which we could always ask, either trade with Crux, give them a couple credits or whatever, and ask them to defend for us, or the Deathless, or some third party. So we could maintain the Peaceable Kingdom while also defending ourselves, just not necessarily with outright attacking.
And I think the UPC is one of my, our chiefest concerns in looking at the Blood the Enemy route, right? Because look at Hroa, right, which is in system with the UPC. The concern here is that, say that they do something that kind of unexpected, right? Say they move like 2 or 3 assets onto Hroa on turn 1, right? We'll have the ability to respond. I mean, okay, can they move 2 or 3? I think they can with Beachhead Landers. I think they have enough force for that. If they move 2 or 3 assets that direction, they leave themselves very exposed. But either we have to move stuff to their home planet and attack. They'll be stealthed. We don't have to talk about that, but
yeah.
Or in order to remove stuff from Hroa, we have to start attacking it. Otherwise, we have to wait until they attack. And if we're waiting until they attack, then they could build up farther, right? It's a very uncomfortable situation for us to leave stuff stationed on a world for extended periods of time. So that's one of my chiefest concerns, is we could be forced into a situation like that where it's very mechanically not okay to be peaceable, to not attack and just counterattack. And then if Deathless want to do it, we have to let them move for 2 turns, and so this is kind of the concern.
Economically,
sorry.
Economically, sorry, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Economically speaking, if we see that the UPC are building up, we can outbuild them. That is something that we're very capable of doing.
Yeah, although in character, if we see the UPC building a bunch of units, I think it would be kind of shitty for us to just build a bunch of units on Hroa.
Yeah.
Because in character, we would not realize that they were doing that.
I think it's. I mean, my impression from what Adam has said about this, and maybe he'll come to this VOD later and completely, overrule me, but I got the feeling that they're kind of we just shouldn't take a bunch of stuff and plop it on their head with stealth detection. That would be really in bad sport. But if they start building up stuff, then I think we hear rumors about it.
Yeah, we would start to find out, surely.
Yeah.
I think if they were unstealth, I might be okay with that. But like, if they are only stealth assets, it feels like a very kind of Deus Ex Machina thing to
I
just be
wanted
like,
to,
oh, let's protect ourselves from the threat that we don't know about yet.
I wanted to say an outside point. This isn't like going against Peaceful, but I'm not like fully on Blood the Enemy quite yet. Is one thing I have kind of thought about Peaceful is if we do rely on Deathless, we have to be aware that Deathless also have to take care of their own affairs, and they also have to. We don't know what other possible contracts they do on if they can even defend us. Like, even say we make a contract with Deathless, we also have to be aware that they could have been attacked themselves, and I feel like that might be a consideration of if we do pick Peaceful, do we want to rely on the Deathless if we want any attack capabilities? If we're not thinking about what if
At least for
they.
these first 4 turns, we can rely on Crux to defend us as well. That is their job. That is like why they exist.
Not necessarily.
I mean, that still brings the same point of we're relying on someone else that they don't have their own affairs to deal with.
Right. Plus, the other issue is that I feel like it's a waste to go through all the trouble of hiring the Deathless to protect us for the sake of a 1 XP goal that is sort of irrelevant. If we have a real goal in mind, the Deathless percent, but I don't think it's worth doing that to be defended by the Deathless, paying them money, giving them a stronger position just so we can take a goal that won't really have any effect on us.
Yeah.
And
so
practically speaking, if we want to pay the Deathless or if we want to rely on Crux to defend us, that can't happen instantaneously. Like, movement in this game is slow or difficult.
True.
So if we want to rely on other people, we have to. We're limiting ourselves so dramatically. And like, what happens if we get put in a position where on turn 3 or turn 4 we really feel the necessity to attack? Like, that resets our 4-turn counter. We'll probably be stuck with Peaceful Kingdom forever then. Like, that's incredibly risky.
Right.
Yeah.
We probably will be stuck with Peaceable Kingdom forever if we pick it, and Pixis doesn't see that as an issue because being stuck with a faction goal for our faction, which has 777, doesn't matter because completing a goal doesn't get us anything.
Right.
It's just like so thematically.
Yeah, that's just weird.
Well,
risky.
So thematically, how we would see it is that we ultimately don't want to fight and attack. I think we all agree, like, initially we're building a defensive standpoint. Our stance isn't aggressive. And so instead of Blood the Enemy is kind of, we're ready to fight, we will fight. Whereas Peaceable Kingdom, if we attack somewhere, it becomes kind of tragic. It's a sort of admission that we can't escape the realities of the sector's politics.
I think what we have to also consider with Blood the Enemy, though, is the fact that I've kind of, changed off the idea of Aerodynamics being peaceful because I'm considering more that counterattack. I wasn't aware that counterattack counted towards Blood the Enemy. We don't necessarily need to attack with Blood the Enemy. We can say, oh, they're attacking us, we can counterattack in a defensive stance. Yeah. And that still means we are peaceful, but it also takes on the fact that, yes, we are ready to defend ourselves.
Yeah,
and counterattack.
The enemy is not an aggressive goal. It doesn't have to be anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that our position is much more a Blood the Enemy on, if you attack us, we will tear you a new one, and not Peaceful Kingdom where, we don't want to fight anybody at all. We're very much don't F with us or we'll F with you. Even if that means even if we're not deploying soldiers and attacking homeworld, at least if you send people into our sector and attack us, they're going to die. That's a Blood the Enemy goal, not a peaceful.
Yeah,
or statement.
It's also very noble in that sense of stating the justification for actions rather than being like, oh, we're good in this way, like we're a good peaceful people. It's like, no, we wanted to be peaceful, you forced our hand.
Right. I in some ways disagree with the idea of saying we pick Blood of the Enemy, that doesn't mean we're peaceful. I think it means if we pick peaceful, it's basically saying we are too passive at times. Right. Because again, bringing that point, it's bringing to the point of we're saying, okay, we're constantly going to rely on Crux or Deathless to help us attack. But in that scenario, it's still saying that we as a faction are not ready to attack. And in some ways, that's giving the wrong message. We need to say we're picking Blood of the Enemy, not because we're ready to attack, but we're picking Blood of the Enemy because we are ready to defend, is a way better statement to go out with.
Yeah, and if it's peaceful to the point where we're not even willing to fight pirates and terrorists.
I was going to ask, does it mean we can't counterattack?
No.
No, we can counterattack with peaceful.
Yeah, the goal doesn't restrict you mechanically. It won't make any sense narratively for us to be proclaiming that we don't want to fight anybody and that we don't defend ourselves.
I mean,
We're
the
sitting
other
in
thing
full
is our
force.
faction tag is Machiavellian, and we get a
Right.
bonus to
Attack.
cunning.
Cunning.
Right. An asset that has been placed on one of our worlds, then we have a bonus on that.
If I may, Serpents was the one that was undecided, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think about after hearing the arguments for and against?
Specifically, Serpents itself was leaning towards Peaceable Kingdom, but was never able. We weren't able to get a concise meeting and a statement towards that. From what I'm understanding with the discussions, give me like 2 seconds to be like, hey, Serpents, we still feel this way regarding it. But from the discussions going forward, in a narrative sense, I can understand both arguments of Peaceful Kingdom being, oh, we don't want to start a fight. But I am of the opinion that it does lock us in this weird mechanical statement saying that Blood the Enemy is like, we're not trying to fight, but we'll be willing to fight. So I can get both sides of this argument, and give me like 2 seconds to be like, yo, Serpents, what up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe. Meanwhile, while Serpents decides, you can kind of help me understand the situation a bit better. If we take Blood the Enemy, do our chances of actually leveling up increase significantly? Is it a possibility?
It's like when you say the word significantly, it's like significantly in the sense that like double 0.5% is 1%.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly.
So essentially, what we're talking about then is an initial like posture that we were going to take, right? If we take Peaceable Kingdom, then we are to be perceived by the others as we don't want to fight under any circumstances. And if we take Blood the Enemy, then we take the posture of we don't want to fight, but we will definitely whoop your ass if you attack us.
Yeah, I think a lot of the big concern with taking Peaceful is not if we can accomplish Peaceful, and that's fine. But I think at some point our faction is going to have to fight somebody. It may not be in the first 4 turns. It may not be for 8 turns. But if we take Peaceable Kingdom and do not accomplish that right away, then we're condemning ourselves to at some point really needing to change our goal, and that's an entire turn without if you don't accomplish it, and that's a big commitment.
I think the statement is that while it is difficult for us to level up, if we take Blood the Enemy, there is a chance that it might happen. If we take Peaceful Kingdom, it does not seem like there is that chance.
Well, it's not even mechanically. It's purely like if we as a faction, like I think we've all kind of agreed that our goal should be primarily a thematic one and not a mechanical one.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think later on in the game, it's very likely that we will need to have an aggressive goal, whether that's destroy the foe or planetary seizure or anything like that. And mechanically, it's very punishing to us to change a goal without accomplishing it. And I think it's very, very conceivable that we will never accomplish a Peaceful Kingdom goal, while it's almost inconceivable to me that we would never accomplish a Blood the Enemy. And so having that guaranteed ability to, after seeing how the game's playing out, seeing how other factions are interacting with us, being able to say, okay, we've now accomplished our goal, and we can pick something more appropriate for free, I think that mechanically has a lot of value, even if the experience it gives is somewhat irrelevant.
So the impossibility of the task of Peaceable Kingdom is the primary draw for us. Like the idea that our faction principally wants a peaceful sector and is chasing it for the whole show and will never achieve it, and everybody kind of knows that, is the draw. However, I'm just polling a bit of just slightly polling interest in Pixis. We accept Blood the Enemy as a sort of defensive stance. Like, so long as we're not using Blood the Enemy as a justification to go and stomp somebody, and it's like we will defend our own worlds to the death, we can kind of accept that as a sort of self-defense maneuver. not like, and that does sort of preclude like preemptive strikes. We're not really on board with stuff like that.
Yeah.
But blood the enemy milled by defending against things wouldn't be. It wouldn't be unpalatable. It's unpalatable, but it's not unacceptable.
Right, and I think we have to consider also that mechanically, Adam set up this sector to have conflict, because if we, the fact if we even manage to make peaceable kingdom for 4 turns, I feel like that means someone has done something wrong. There are enough factions with enough reasons to have an issue that shouldn't happen. So mechanically, I think we should assume there will be fighting, and narratively, there's been lots of talk, in IC about how the sector's in turmoil and there's new dangers everywhere. It doesn't make sense in character to have a passive goal either, because we know that things are getting dangerous. And I feel like that just in both mechanical sense and like a practical sense and in character sense, it makes sense to be poised against something, especially with Vagrant becoming more aggressive.
So I think we're all in agreement that discussion for goals have been stated. I think we'll cut the discussion for the goals there because it feels like everyone has said something about it. We'll continue on that. If there's anything else, if anyone feels that they have not said something, speak now. Cool.
Actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
Pix's support for Blood the Enemy is heavily built on a self-defensive policy from the house as a whole, and we would feel that that's important to us, that the house isn't looking for fights to the extent that it is almost detrimental. Like, we aren't willing to like hunt down the dogs or anything, and we will let Crux go after Vagrant and not go for them ourselves.
Okay, so
we are also on that, like, we're on that standpoint of, it's not necessarily we want to say we're attacking. We just understand that peaceful gives us, in some ways, peaceful can show that we're like not able to do anything, more or less, and that we need to consider Blood the Enemy as a good choice of if we want to be more reliable in some senses.
Okay, so I think again, everyone's good here. We'll be moving forward in the discussion. Believe we can either go back to discussing the Pixis asset swap up if we have any more conversations on assets, or we can talk about the hit point.
I mean, my personal feeling was that like the asset, them having switched that to transport lockdown, and then I guess we'll all have the ability once we get towards the voting phase to amend some of our proposals.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you're on the impression that assets were discussed.
I mean, is there any more to be said on assets that people feel burning need to?
I think I might mention what I mentioned in the chat. That's the transport lockdown is not really a defensive asset so much, because my understanding of the transport lockdown is you must attack another faction with it, which I would assume means, that means that asset has to be like be able to attack, like in range to attack. Can it just attack from anywhere?
That was also my understanding of. That's why I was confused, kind of, that Pixis wanted it, because I thought that you have to attack in order for somebody to not be able to.
You have to attack someone, but you attack them to make them go away. It's not a sort of
although
not going to deal any damage or anything like that. It's not ideal, but it is as close as we can get to what we want. If that makes sense.
I guess the problem is, like, to attack them though, they would already need to be there, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they've already moved onto the lodestone system, then it's too late. But that's the only time you'd either need to move the transport lockdown off of lodestone and attack them, or they would already need to be there, and then you wouldn't actually be able to prevent them from coming. It feels a little weird to me.
Yeah,
I'm of the same idea.
I feel like it's very much we can't conclude a reason to why we would do it as well, because in the first turn we don't know what other situations are, and if we pick lockdown, we're basically saying, okay, well, this is a situation where if you go near lodestone, lodestone's going to act upon it, but we don't know what people's actions to what lodestone is. And like, looking at the short term and long term again, it's like, in the short term we have this set out for this one, but we don't even know if it's going to come into effect.
Yeah, I think I threw out in the chat maybe blockade runners as an alternative for Pixis is something that's a little bit more defensive that maybe thematically would fit. But I'd be curious to hear what Pixis thinks.
We kind of saw blockade runners as a bit cheap.
Yeah, and it's not an expensive asset, but I'm trying to find something that's like somewhat thematic.
Yeah, at this point, I think we're just trying to find something.
We as a house are very happy with transport lockdown. We think we can deploy it effectively to sort of do what we want. Because we have always so Klaus's argument that it may never come into effect is true, but that's something we built our slate around. Well, we built our slate around our asset, and we talked about what we wanted out of it. We wanted something which we could use primarily defensively, and something which is about keeping us not the primary target of anybody. And so, if it never comes into play, that is ideal for us.
I'm not saying if it never comes into play. I'm saying is in the short term, I don't see I feel like it's something we need to consider later on picking up. I feel like in this current situation in the short term, we have no reason to pick it up, because even saying we have the lockdown, don't come near us, they will just pick a different location for us. Where if we have like something as a military unit that's able to move, we're basically saying you cannot attack any of us. We are ready at any point. I feel like, yes, I understand your point of putting lockdown on Pixis, these places like Close Zone, but we're also saying we're preparing for anything that can go on, where I would rather look to the long-term, short-term and say, we at least know if someone attacks us on the short term, we can move the public units or units elsewhere as well.
And if I just may ask, are Pixis as a whole adamantly against popular movement? Because I've been reading
unilaterally, like completely and totally.
Right, but have you suggested certain? I'm just because I'm reading my house's chat, and they're all very much, in fact, for popular movement, and they've suggested several solutions to that wouldn't involve Pixis actually being responsible for that. One, I think, semi-joking, was that there are agents from Lyra on Pixis promoting Cinder, and that they're trying. It's very silly, but it's along those lines, or perhaps a cadre of Aka followers that's been traveling around the sector promoting. There's certain things that we can do as a faction.
Okay. I think points have been made regarding assets, but I believe we want to have a quick vote on goals, which I'm pretty sure we're going to be cutting the stream for that.
Actually, what we're just going to do is basically for the stream, it's going to appear much like the 5-minute recess we have. We can switch back to the splash screen. I will share to the council members who have the ability to vote the way we will be voting, so that we don't have to kill the stream.
Okay, cool.
It's just
even better. You are a technological wizard.
So yeah, we can just go ahead and basically it'll appear like a 5-minute recess. So that's all we have to do. All right, and we are back from our voting. A result has been decided, but as was agreed at the beginning of these at this session, we will not be publicly announcing that vote until it is presented by Adam at the stream. So, with that, I'll turn it back over to the speaker, and we can figure out where we're going next.
Okay, so from my understanding, the next next conversation on the slate is the 3 extra hit points that we have, or what's it called? Yeah, that's basically it, as far as I'm understanding the next thing.
Yeah, so yeah, we just need to sort of have a general discussion where people can maybe raise points over why they think their planet or another planet should be the one to get that. We're going to be using just a couple tiers of instant runoff voting to pick the planets. So
okay, if I may just put forward that Serpens would very much enjoy 1 hit point.
So, yeah,
It's reasonable, personally.
I will just throw out there that Reticulum has absolutely 0 strong opinions about this issue.
Okay.
Kind of the same in Lyra. We were like,
I mean,
if
Serpens will take
if
off
nobody
the-
wants them, we'll take one. But
Yeah, we're kind of on the same. Since
Yeah. We didn't
Pixis
have a
also
vote.
thinks Serpens should have a hit point.
I think, like, I've suggested Pixis, Lyra, and Hroa. Or, yeah, Pixis, Orpheus, and Hroa, so that's Lodestone, Orpheus, and Hroa. That's what I've suggested in the past. I think these are the 3 that could use them the most.
I think me and my friend Reticulum, we technically don't need it since both our planets are in the same system, so we don't have to worry as much.
Mhm.
I agree
It's
with
kind
that.
of it's like
I think
reasonable
we're the
to
2
us.
safest planets.
Like it's reasonable to say us 2 don't have to worry about the extra hit points, so it's just divided as we choose. I think Verona should be a good option for hit points, as it's one of the ones out of reach, for sure, as a consideration.
Yeah, Hroa is willing to accept any and all of the hit points that you wish to give.
I think also
I literally
Lodestone.
made that statement and got all of Serpens pinging me saying, "Just take all the hit points, please."
I tried suggesting that we should give Loveless 10, but then I was notified that that's not possible. So I was like, oh, okay. But I think that Lodestone should definitely get one, since we think it's likely to be attacked and we're not sure what's happening with assets. Pro sounds good. And I mean, I heard 2 times Orpheus, so I'll go with that. Yeah, I agree.
okay.
So it sounds like Reticulum and Aerodonts don't want it. I think we said that Triangulum, since it's going to have a lot of assets on it, maybe doesn't need it.
Yeah, because
So
they've
that
got.
leaves 4 for 3 points.
I would definitely consider Heroa one which should get hit points because of the fact it's one of our more further outreaches. Perhaps Aquila because they're closest to anyone that can be a threat to us. If that makes sense.
Like, it's like one HP. Like, by the time they're swinging at bases of influence, it's like
It's really not going to be.
Yeah, it's like that. It's a safety blanket. Agreed. But it's our safety blanket, and we want it.
So the biggest thing mechanically that moving from 7 to 8 does is it moves the average, because like the average of like 2d8 is right around 7 and 8, I believe, right? Isn't that the way that works? And most attacks are like 2d8 or 2d6.
Mhm.
So we're like right near the average basically. At 7, and 8 gives you that like one more bump up. That's about the biggest advantage you get. Somebody in Twitch chat did ask for a quick rundown on instant runoff voting. So the way that works is planets would be ranked. So when a house representative votes, they say, okay, we want this house number 1 and this house number two, so on and so forth, all the way down till 7. And then they are compiled, and if nobody has a majority, the lowest vote drops off and votes are redistributed. I can drop a Wikipedia link in the Twitch chat for further explanation.
Okay.
Are we good on this?
Yeah, I think we're good. Where we can just vote on it. The discussion's been made. I have opinions.
Okay.
Well, we have one. We all have opinion about one. I don't think the rest we feel too strong about.
So the other option, I guess, we can put forth if people then, if we have just one that seems to want it, we could just roll a die to randomly give it to the extra planets. But I don't know how people would feel about that.
I think the runoff voting is the best, honestly. It's the fairest.
Runoff is fair.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
That works. So I don't believe we have anything else specifically to discuss as far as this agenda goes.
Yeah. From what I'm looking, there's nothing else aside from 30 minutes of whatever I want to talk about. So let me tell you about bagpipe.
Bagpipes, you say?
No, I have nothing.
I once learned.
Well, I know I can tell the tale of a certain emperor.
Well, if nobody else has anything specific, then I would like to mention that there are several proposals and a vote that is currently ongoing in faction term planning for minor houses. So individuals should definitely go check that out, read the proposals, be informed. It's part of how this process works. Obviously, anybody who is listening in, if you have questions, reach out to your house reps. We will be doing the votes. Again, results won't be publicly announced until we give them to Adam on the due date. So that everybody have to wait for them to figure out what we actually decide. But unless any council member has anything else, I think we need to remind everybody or bring up. I think we're fine to close this meeting.
Yeah, just again, a general thank you for every House member to have this meeting and come together for this. Shows a good sign of faith for everyone. We're all pretty reasonable people.
Thank you for hosting the meeting.
Yeah, it's just been, difficult, but definitely very constructive.
Well, you're the low Pixis on the totem pole, unfortunately.